Our gospel today is full of wonderful details. If we take it little phrase by phrase, there's all these wonderful extra things that kind of pass our ears or pass our eyes when we read it for ourselves. Most of us are probably familiar with the ancient prayer, Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. That's echoed in the prayer of the blind beggar. So there's a couple things to stop and dwell upon. So notice that Jesus is walking by all kinds of people. But the only one that calls out to him is a blind beggar. There are none so blind as those who will not see. The blind beggar, in fact, sees more clearly than all the others. Even though he can't physically see Jesus, he knows that he's present, and he cries out to him. As long as we're convinced of our righteousness, as long as we think we have it all together and we can control all things, go ahead and take the day off, God, I've got this one, we won't know that we need to cry out for Jesus. We won't know that we need his help. So notice that Jesus doesn't stop for the blind beggar when he hears him. He continues on, not out of indifference. I think there's two reasons. One, to teach the blind beggar, which really represents us, to cry out all the more, to persist in crying out for his help. And secondly, he's going to teach a lesson to those who are following him. Because what did they originally do when they heard the blind beggar? Leave Jesus alone. Don't bother him. Keep your troubles to yourself. And so when Jesus does stop, he doesn't go back to the blind beggar himself. He says to those following him, call him. And so Jesus says that to each one of us. As we've come to know Jesus, as he's helped us in our lives, he also says to us, call them. Those people that you meet in your own family, or even strangers, who are suffering under weakness and brokenness and their sins, call them to Jesus. That's part of our job, to call them, to bring them to Jesus. And so what do they say? Take courage, get up. Jesus is calling you. When the blind beggar hears this, he threw aside his cloak, sprang up, and came to Jesus. Now remember, he's a blind beggar. All he has in the world is his cloak. He probably sleeps on it at night, and it keeps him dry from the dew. He uses it to keep the rain off of himself. He probably also uses it to shade himself in the sun. It's all that he has. He doesn't have a home to go to or a car to sleep in, none of the fancy, comfortable things of life. But when he hears that Jesus is calling him, he throws away all that he has and springs up with urgency to come to Jesus. And so should we. Every single day, God sends us signal graces and urges us to come to him. It's all those ones you have where you're in the middle of doing something, whether it's watching television or some other form of thing that you're doing, and you have that intuition, I should stop and pray, but we don't. We let the call of Jesus pass us by. Jesus is constantly calling us each and every day with those graces, and in those moments when it comes to us, stop whatever it is that you are doing. Throw away whatever your worldly cares are and come to Jesus. So Jesus says, what do you want me to do for you? And the blind man, of course, replied to him, Master, I want to see. So two things we can find there. The first is Jesus is actually waiting for you to tell him what it is that you want from him. Have the courage to speak from your heart Don't ask for lesser things. Be bold. Ask for the thing that you really long for. The conversion of a family member. The own strengthening of your faith. Be bold. Whatever it is that is on your heart, say it to Jesus. He wants you to tell him. Finally, Jesus says, go your way. Your faith has saved you. Immediately the beggar received his sight and followed him on the way. Did you catch that? Jesus says, go your way. Choose your way. What did the beggar choose? He followed him on the way. That's the first name for Christianity, in case you've forgotten it. The way. Right? Jesus says in John chapter 14, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. In our first reading, the prophet Jeremiah had kind of a bad job. He was one of those prophets sent to bring really bad news. Because of your infidelity, because of your breaking of the covenant, God is going to send you, the nation Israel, into exile, where you will learn to trust and follow me. And then we have this piece from Jeremiah, where he gives them hope in the midst of punishment. They departed in tears, but I will console them and guide them. I will lead them to brooks of water on a level road, so that none shall stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Whenever you hear sacred scripture talk about brooks of running water, you have to put in your mind what it is to be in the Middle East. I was stationed in Saudi Arabia when I was in the Navy. And it's dirt as far as the eye can see. It doesn't even have the vegetation that we have here. It's shifting sands. Everything moves. It's hot. So in the middle of that, you'll come upon what they call an oasis. In the middle of nowhere, surrounded by scorching heat and sands that move, there's this bubbling, cool water teeming with life. That's what God calls us to. You and I are not citizens of this world. We are citizens of heaven. We are in a sort of exile ever since we lost paradise. And it's to paradise that God is calling us. He promises us brooks of running water. Have you ever tried to walk in sand, perhaps on the beach? It's not an easy thing. And so God declares he will make a level road so that none shall stumble. That's the way. Every once in a while, someone will say to me in conversation, especially when they find out I'm a priest, right? They like to say, well, it doesn't matter what religion you belong to. All paths lead to the same God. All paths converge on the same point. No, they don't. They really, truly don't. I believe that it's possible for many people to stumble in different ways, and through the generosity of God, they somehow discover that they're on the path that they didn't know that they were on. But there is only one way. There is only one road. If we wish to come to the Father, if we wish to reach paradise, we need Jesus. He is the way. And so I would say we should never forget that for ourselves. Jesus is the way that we need. He is calling us. Let us spring up with urgency and come to him, setting aside everything else. But let us never forget that for everyone else that we know and love, for everyone else that we meet. Jesus is the way that leads to salvation, and they too desperately need him. And so we ought to be able to say to them, take courage. Jesus is calling you.